All right. I'm going to call to order the board meeting of the CUSD Board of Education for September 9th, 2021. So welcome, everyone. Our first item is a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, thanks, everyone. And then the next item is 1.2 board agenda approval. Could I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Satish. And a second, please.
Happy to second.
Okay, I think I heard
So-
Lori
so-
slightly first. Yes.
So if anything need to be changed out of this, should we tell now or?
Yeah. Did you want to?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Consent, I have at least one.
Oh, yeah. No, we can pull consent. We can do the consent calendar later. You think about pulling?
Oh, no,
items
no,
in
no,
consent?
no. Since it's approved. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and vote on this then. So to vote on the agenda as presented here. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, then moving on to item 2. This is public comments on closed session. Aaron, do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
Great, thank you. With that then, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn us to closed session. We expect to be back around 6 p.m. Thank you. Folks. Okay, are we on right now? All right, thank you. Okay, all right. I'm gonna go ahead and reconvene us back to open session. There's nothing to report from the closed session, and we'll adjourn back to closed session at the end of this open session. So let's see, item 7.1 superintendent report. Stacy.
Thank you. So just a couple of items under the superintendent's report. Just a reminder to all that with the governor's executive order that has been allowing us to do our virtual school board meetings, it does expire on September 30th. So we are making plans to return to in-person in October, and we'll continue to update and provide additional information. Part of our challenging will be is trying to space out. We do have a large area here that we can accommodate families coming in. We also know that we have a lot of big topics coming up, so we'll want to ensure that all opportunities for our community to make comments. So stay posted, but we are looking forward to coming back to fully in person for board meetings. The other thing that I just wanted to share with you is that on September 14th, we do have our State of the District Luncheon, and it really is an opportunity for us to highlight CUSD, our 25 schools, what's going on, and really talking about not only where we are, but what our future plans are and where our district priorities are and how we're going to get to there. So excited to have an opportunity to share. We'll actually have 2 of our principals that will share a day in the life of a student at an elementary school and a day in the life of a middle school student. So looking forward to hearing from them as well. That's all I have
Okay.
under superintendents.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? If not, we'll move on to 7.2 school reports.
All right, so this one I have a little bit longer of it. I'm just wanting to give an update as we're reopened school and again, implementing all of our safety protocols. We've continued to modify and adjust really with that hope of keeping schools open. And that really is, we feel it's a safe environment for our students. We want to ensure that they get to stay in class, that we don't have to shut down classes or shut down schools. We're continuing to require the mask indoors as well as requiring them outdoors and or 6-foot spacing while they're eating lunch outdoors. We are expanding our testing to all of our school sites so that it's available throughout the district. And we are still exploring and hoping to have a confirmation that we may be able to add a Saturday testing site as well. And we would do that at one of our facilities here, but open it up so that families have a little bit more flexibility when they want to come in and get testing. The other piece that with our home independent study program, we continue to have interest in it. It continues to grow. We actually are excited on tonight's agenda. We are bringing forward our Edgenuity contract, which is going to allow us to offer to our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders the virtual academy. We are able to secure about 100 spots into that we will then be able to utilize this first semester. We don't have quite that many 6th, 7th, and 8th graders signed up. We wanted to have a couple available spots in case we want to grow. We do still assign one of our district teachers to oversee the students that are in the academic or in the academy, excuse me, but we don't have to have such a small caseload for that teacher. We are still offering our K-5 with our own independent study teachers. Again, interest is growing there. We've been able to shift some of our teachers from our home sites to move over into the independent study and are slowly able to accommodate. I would say there is a little bit of concern if we continue to grow in our independent study, because where we are at a point now is finding staffing to cover that. We have had to look at our neighborhood schools as classes have declined in size, that we may have to free up a teacher from a neighborhood school and shift them into independent study. At this point, we are okay. We have all of our staffing needs covered. We're able to offer the independent study to everyone that's asked for it, and contracting again with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade with the academic virtual academy has helped us tremendously. The other thing is that I know that we've had several meetings with groups of parents who are really interested in the distance learning. There is concern, fear from families about coming back, although we want to reassure them that our schools are a safe place to return. We have our safety protocols in place. And I think the response back is just a reminder that as a school district, we're not allowed to do the distance learning. That also expired with the governor's executive order on June 30th. We are expected to have students back to in person, and our only other option is the independent study. We also know that the governor and the state is continuing to look at legislation, and that may be modified in the weeks to come, and we'll modify and adjust as needed at that point. But right now, we really are not able to offer that distance learning. The other piece that wanted to touch on is our parent volunteers, because we are so fortunate in CUSD to have a plethora of families that are so willing to give their time to help us out in the schools. And we did open the school year limiting the number of parent volunteers. We looked at the essential workers under the guidelines, and so we did limit the number of parent volunteers that are able to be on each campus. We also recognize that there are a lot of different services and supports that those parents offer to our schools. And so we want to ensure that the schools really feel like they are getting the support that they need. And so we are looking at how to expand the number of parent volunteers on the campuses and allowing to ensure that the schools get their needs met. So we'll look at how can we expand that so that all parents that want to help volunteer and all school needs are met as well. So we'll continue to explore and expand that as well. And I think that is probably all I have for school opening.
All right, thank you, Stacy. All right, let's move on to item 7.3. This is the recognition for the newly tenured teachers. So Leslie.
Great. Well, we're very excited as a human resources department to spend time tonight celebrating our newly tenured teachers. We have a long list of educators that have worked with us for the past 2 years and became tenured on the first day of school this year. I have my colleagues in the Human Resources Department that will be introducing the schools and the names of the individuals. And just once again, if they are watching, it would be so lovely if we could be in person with you, recognizing you. You will be receiving certificates. We celebrate you. We so appreciate your contribution to our district and to the students that you serve. I'm not sure, Stacy, do you want to do comments after, possibly you and Jerry?
I would love to just say a quick round of congratulations to our teachers and welcome to the CUSD family. We know that you coming on board tonight as tenured teachers, you have really faced many challenges over the last 2 years to get to this point. And so appreciative of the work and sticking with us and looking forward for many years going forward. So thank you to all of them.
Great, and thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Adolfo Laguna, Mike Cellini, and Laurel Henderson, and they will read schools and names. Adolfo?
Sorry, I forgot to mute. I'll start over or unmute. I'll start over. So I just wanted to add to what Leslie and Stacy already mentioned. It really truly is an honor to be here with you tonight to recognize an outstanding group of certificated staff members as they achieve their important milestone in their career in earning their tenure status. I think as the directors of human resources, one of our priorities is to recruit and retain the most talented and dedicated and qualified workforce. And Tonight, we are pleased to introduce to you the latest group of permanent certificate staff members that demonstrate these qualities. So we're going to start off with Collins Elementary. We have 2 staff members there. So the first one is Anelia Lanes. And we also have Shruti Srinivasan. Moving over to Dilworth Elementary, we have Celeste Llovera. At Eaton Elementary, we have Sophie Chu and Sarah Terry. At Eisenhower Elementary, we have Danica Lyon. At Faria Elementary, we have Kashma Haladi, Julie Heller, and Rachel Hughes. Moving over to Garden Gate Elementary, we have Molly Fudali. And at Meyerholz Elementary, we have Vanessa Chi, Yi Wen Chua. We're going to skip over the next name for now. We'll explain later why. Also at Meyerholz, we have Allison Moya, Yanan Tao, Amy Ting, and Phoebe Yang.
Then good evening. I will do the next set of schools. So starting with Muir, we have Catherine Inamori, Murdoch Portal, Parul Gupta. For Sedgwick Elementary School, Mark Johnson. Stevens Creek Elementary School, Janelle Geist. Cupertino Middle School, Itai Shatau, Daphne Chung, Laura Hennessy, and Eliza Masters.
Hey, and I'll continue on with the names from Hyde Middle School. We have Kyle Moyles, Karuthika Palvanan, and Ashley Shorte. From Lawson Middle School, we have Alithia Chen, Chandoshi Kulkarni, Janaki Nagarajan, and we have Natalie Pangilanan. From Miller Middle School, we have Somya Lachumanan and Amina Shahid. From Student Support Services, we have Laurel Anderson, Julia Chang, John Suse, Brian Troyer, Nandita Shridhara Upadhyaya, and Susan Weistart. And then from Home Study, we have Jessica Gayet. Thank you.
So congratulations to our newly tenured teachers. Thank you, colleagues, for reading names for us. And I will turn it back over to the board.
All right, thank you. And just on behalf of the board, I'd like to express our congratulations to our newly tenured teachers. Really happy. I'm sure it was quite an adventure last year, and we're really happy that y'all chose to join the CUSD family. So thank you and welcome. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then to item 8.1. I don't think we have any employee organization communication. Just to confirm, Aaron?
Confirmed, no
Great.
communication.
Thank you. And then moving on to item 9, this public comment. So this is the portion of the meeting for the public to make comments on items that are not on the agenda tonight. So if you'd like to comment on a specific agenda item, we'll take those comments when they come up later in the meeting. So there's a link to the comment card, to a public comment card on the district website. And so please fill that comment card out. We'll call on you when it's your turn to speak, and please put your hand up and we'll mute your microphone and all that. Okay, with that then, are there anyone here to speak on 9.1 today, Aaron?
Yes, we have one public comment.
I'm sorry, we do have one
One,
speaker.
mhm.
All right, okay, let's go ahead and
Fang.
bring this person up.
Yes. Fang Liu.
Fang Lu, okay. I see a hand up here, so let's go ahead and, all right, please go ahead and unmute your mic and speak whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. This is my first time join. So my comment is related to the free lunch. First, I really appreciate the huge effort to provide the free lunch to the whole school district. However, the current lunch menu, if you take a look at the September lunch menu, there are more than 75% lunch or started with a cheese, like a cheeseburger and a cheese pizza and cheese something. If you look at that, just too many cheese there. I understand the cheese is healthy and a lot of kids love cheese, but still a lot of kids, they don't eat any cheese at all. They hate cheese. So for example, my kid and her friend, actually a few of her friends, they all hate cheese. So we had to bring our own lunch like 4 days this week. 3 days this week. So I'm just wondering, can you provide some comment or feedback to the lunch provider? Limit the cheese days, provide some other cheese, some other lunch options to kids. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just as a matter of policy, we don't comment on comments on items that are not the agenda, but that's something that we'll certainly accept the comments here and bring that back later. All right, and then moving on then to item 10. We have two public hearings today. The first public hearing is on 10.1 is basically a statutory one we do every year. It's a declaration that we have provided sufficient materials, instructional materials to the students. Should I go ahead and open the meeting or is there a staff introduction?
No,
No.
you can go ahead.
All right, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open the public meeting here. Public hearing on 10.1. Do we have any speakers on 10.1?
No, we do not.
All right, thank you. And then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for 10.1. Moving on to item 10.2. This is a application to the State Board of Education for a waiver for appointment of a district advisory committee. So again, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Do we have any comments on this?
No, we do not.
All right, thank you. And all right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this item for 10.2. Then moving on to item 11, we have a consent calendar, 20 items this time, I think, with one Apple item. So could I get a motion for the Apple?
Before that, I have
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
I was thinking that I know Stacy covered one of the items a
Mhm.
little bit, but I would like to hear a little bit more on that 11.10.
Okay, so go ahead and pull 11.10.
10,
That's the ingenuity. Okay, thank you. Any other items, any other board members would like to poll for discussion? All right, if not, let's go ahead and vote. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It was away from the mic.
Right, great.
So-
Okay, so go ahead and vote on the rest of the items and we'll come back to 11.10. And so could I get a motion for 11.1, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for 11.1.
Thank you, Satish. In a second.
Second.
I thank you, Sylvia. Let's go ahead and vote on 11.1. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Recusal? One. Okay, so thank you. Motion passes 4-0 with one recusal. And then can I get a motion for items 11.2 through 11.20 minus 11.10?
I'll move 11.2 through 11.9, followed by 11.11 through 11.20.
Okay, I think I heard Lori first. Would you be willing to second the motion, Phyllis?
I will second.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this. And all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. So motion passes 5-0. Let's come back to 11.10 then. And Satish, would you like
Yeah.
to?
So what I was saying is, I know that Stacy touched up on this a little bit. I would like to, if you can explain a little more about this, what is their service and how it is going to be benefited for the whole independent study.
Sure, happy to. So actually, I'm going to defer to Allison as she's done a tremendous amount of work with Edgenuity, has met with them and actually had held some parent information sessions as well.
Yes, so I'm happy to say this will be a very good option for those
Oh,
students.
stop.
I think this will be a very good option for our middle school students. And we are preparing to launch, pending your approval, on Monday with 66 students currently enrolled. We do have space for up to 100 in this first semester. If all of those slots are not used, that it would just carry over to the second semester. So for students returning or new students coming in, we would have another agreement at that point for the second semester to reflect need. And we have a CUSD teacher of record who is in charge of monitoring progress, but also holding daily check-ins, live meets with the kids to help them feel a sense of connection to each other and our district and their teacher of record. And also we'll be doing social emotional learning lessons similar to the ones that we're doing in the middle schools during that live check-in time. That teacher also will be monitoring progress of students to be sure that they are making good progress in their courses. The courses will be taught by Edgenuity teachers who are certified teachers in their areas also. So we think of it as a partnership. Students and parents can access via the system, booking appointments for extra help or even tutoring. They have access to their teacher plus what is called a concept coach, which is a tutor in the subject, in addition to our teacher of record who's there to provide support.
Would they do any testing or anything, any tests for the kids? No. Or
Did
it's
you
only
say
a,
Testing, did you say?
yeah, testing, test, subject test, anything?
Yes, so the kids, our program is an ungraded program. So at the end of the year, they will have a credit, no credit situation, but while they're working in the virtual platform, they will be getting grades. And there's quite an extensive platform, a dashboard where you can see how they're doing on their pacing, the progress towards completion, how they're doing on specific skills, and the Edgenuity teachers provide personalized support based on what is needed. And if we feel it's needed, that there's a pacing issue, we can turn on a pretest in any area for a student if it seems that it's going too slow or we need to check further on some of those results. Kids also will complete our district assessments such as iReady, for example.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. A lot of good information.
Okay, thank you. So do we take public comments on items that have been pulled or generally?
I'm assuming that you guys are going to go ahead and vote to approve it.
Yeah, I just wondering procedurally, do we check for public comments from?
You could, although
sorry,
you've already
for all
called for
items,
the
I think
consent
that's right.
items
Okay.
and there was no comment.
All right, okay. All right, let's go ahead and take a vote on.
So I should put a motion, right?
Was there a
since I
motion?
pulled-
Oh, there hasn't been a motion. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so
Okay.
I would prefer, yeah. Like
Thank you.
11.10.
All right, thank you,
Yeah.
Satish. Okay, and could I get a second, please?
Second.
Thanks, Sylvia. Let's go ahead and vote on this then. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to section 12 with the information presentation. We have 3 of them here today. First one is, I think, a continuation of the enrollment and school consolidation presentations. So who's going to kick us off today?
I will go ahead and
right.
start us off. So again, a fairly short, we just wanted to continue to provide information and data. We had committed that we were updating you with our enrollment numbers after our 10-day count, so wanted to bring that back. We also wanted to, after our last board advance in August, we had brought forward our criteria. You as board members did a ranking of the criteria. At that time, one of our board members wasn't available, but we were able to get solicit Phyllis's information so we could add that to the ranking. So wanted to bring back that updated ranking as well. The other piece that you as a board had been interested in doing is talking and having a more of a discussion about middle school size. It's been out there through various presentations when our CAC did the work identifying what was thought to be an ideal size of a middle school, but we had never really spent a lot of time talking about that. So tonight I just wanted to bring a couple points to consider, to think as we continue that conversation moving forward. So tonight is really the continuation of providing data, continuing our movement with still at the end of the month on our September 23rd, we will be bringing back a recommendation to the board. So we can go to the next slides. Sorry. So the criteria ranking, we had we gave the board 10 different criteria that have been developed based on public comments, based on the work of the CAC, based on our information sessions we'd held over the course of the last 2 years, and really felt like these criteria were capturing all of the information that had been shared with us, all of the questions. They were also all criteria that are developed that have data to support them. And so we felt that was really important as we move forward in making our decisions, is that there is data that supports them. So we asked each board member, we gave them 100 points, and you each had that 100 points to spend on the 10 criteria and ranking them and assigning the number of points out of that 100 as to their level of importance. After that, we found the average of each of the ranking, and then could see where the higher priority of each of those ranking items were. So on the next slide, again, this incorporates all 5. So they may be slightly adjusted from what we saw at the board advance, because we do have the 5th members. The other piece is that there was an interest in showing what the range was for each of those criteria, whether a board member may have assigned a 0, a board member may have assigned as high as a 20 or 25. So we wanted to illustrate the range as well. And so you can see there are a couple that stand out as a higher priority, and so they will have a higher rate. What we'll do from this point is we are taking each of our schools, we're running it through this criteria. The questions were designed to be a yes or no, whether it applies to the school. And so if they receive a yes answer, they would be assigned that criteria weight. As we run each school through the ranking, they would have a total score, which will give us the baseline to begin our conversations and identify the schools that potentially could be closed as we move forward into this. I do want to share that we've been working on putting this all together to be a very convenient, transparent method for our community to be able to follow along as we're doing the ranking. And Erin Lindsay, our Director of Communication, and Mahmood, our Senior IT Director, have done an amazing job of creating a dashboard where you'll be able to go into the dashboard, you'll be able to drop down and select any one of the schools, and you can see how they weigh into each of these 10 criteria. So we were hoping to have that live fairly soon. We'll send out information so that anyone can access that and follow us along in this process as well. So again, you can see there are 4 areas that probably stand out with a higher priority. And so those will have a greater weight as we go through. The other piece that I did want to share is that as we were assigning and going through the criteria, there are some areas that we wanted to be very clear and very specific so that we are all assigning the same information to a school. So when we say, are there neighboring schools that will have the capacity to receive the school student population, we're looking at schools that are, is there a school within 1.5 miles of an elementary school? So use that as our baseline criteria when we say neighboring. The other one is schools enrollment low. We use the definition there that is 2 kindergartens or less. The other one is will the district be able to keep geographical neighborhoods? And that is actually, I'm sorry, the one that is a 1.5 miles criteria. So we'll bring all of that forward too when we explain with the criteria and we rank them what each of those means so that it's very consistent across the board. The one that was challenging is really the current traffic issues exist. There aren't really any safety transportation studies that are available. We do work with the cities when we do our safe routes, but there isn't any concrete studies that have been done that determine what is a safe route. So what we looked at assigning as we know that traffic is an issue at all of our schools. I think we can all verify that as we've come to a drop off or a pickup time at the schools. But what we looked at is, does the school have at least 2 access points for a drop off and a pickup so that it can be spread out when students are picked up and dropped off, or are they limited and only have 1 access point? The second piece of that is within 15 minutes on a drop off or a pickup, are students and parents cleared out? So we know that the schools are going to be busy during the drop off and pickup, but is the traffic thinned out enough after 15 minutes that it is no longer congested? So those were the 2 talking points that we looked at for that criteria as well. Leslie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Leslie's been part of this process throughout.
I think you covered it perfectly.
So I'm going to pause on that and ask any questions because our next one is moving on to enrollment. So we actually had 3 different pieces of information in this presentation.
Okay.
So about the dashboard, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah,
Satish,
okay,
yes.
I just, the dashboard, right? So you said it's already available or it's going to be available?
We will make it available very soon, probably within the next couple days. Again, they've just completed it yesterday, so we were still making sure that numbers are accurate in it and it's working well. So we will make it available probably by the beginning of next week.
Okay.
We really do want to have it out there so that people can look at it before we come forward with it on the 23rd.
Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, please, Lori.
Can you talk to me a little bit more about the 1.5 miles? Is that from like school to school, or is that from the border of the attendance area? Because I know like we've got some attendance areas that I know are already, families are traveling 3 miles plus.
We did use our mileage from school to school. So that's our travel route that we use when we map out miles. So it would be from a specific front door of a school to another front door of a school, acknowledging that some could lie on, it could be further than the 1.5, but from school distance to school distance.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Thank you. Just, I don't have an opinion either way. I'm just curious to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Sylvia or Phyllis, either of you have a question?
Nothing here, thanks.
All right, thank you, Phyllis. Sylvia?
So I just wanted to get a little more clarity on the actual criteria that were chosen. I know we were given the list of criteria at the board advance 2 weeks ago, but there may be other criteria that wasn't part of this particular rubric. Will there be an opportunity to go over some of those other, maybe not criteria, but factors or considerations, those kinds of things?
So those that weren't brought forward that aren't the criteria, what will happen is we run the schools through this. We're going to find that there's schools that come out with very comparable scores. We will need to look at other factors or other criteria. There had been other conversations about a single school in a city. Is that going to be a factor? Our special programs that are housed at school sites. So those will, when we look at the final decision of where we want to recommend to come forward, we will have to look at other factors as well. But what will happen when we do bring back our recommendation, we'll make very clear what factors we use to make that determination to weigh in as well.
All right, great, thanks. I have one question about the potential alternative use of the campus, the second to last item there. Wouldn't that be yes for every campus, or maybe you could speak a bit more about exactly how that's evaluated?
It actually was a yes on every campus when we began our initial work on that, because we do believe every campus is a very viable lease option for us.
Okay, so there isn't a differentiation of this one might bring in more money. It's really all of these are binary yes, nos.
They would all be yeses. Where it would go to is to Sylvia's question as a factor. It could be that a larger campus may have more leasability, could bring in more money. That could be a tiebreaker factor that we may continue
Got it. Okay.
consider.
But in this first screening,
But in this
it's
first
all
round,
binary.
they all are yeses.
Great, thank you. All right.
Can I ask one
yes,
more?
of course,
Yeah.
please.
So does alternative school come in picture in this case, or it's only neighborhood schools?
So actually, we're going to run all the schools through. We're going to run the alternative schools through as well and give them the same ranking. Some of them, I think as a disclosure, when we do the dashboard, some of them may come up as an error because declining enrollment, they wouldn't be a declining enrollment. So it would be a no, because we stabilize what their enrollment is at the alternative schools. So their score is probably going to look a little bit different than our neighborhood schools, but we will run them through.
Okay.
Then as a follow-up to Satish, is for Meyerholtz, is that one school or two schools?
So Meyerholtz, we only ran the neighborhood school through it. We didn't run the clip numbers through it as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are we all ready to move on then? Okay, looks that way. So, Lori, did you?
Is there, if we're running the other alternative programs through, is there a reason to or not to run our Cupertino language immersion program as a separate?
We could run the clip through to give that number. It just didn't seem a fair comparison because they share the campus, but we certainly could. We can do that. We can add them onto the dashboard. I have the nod from Mahmood that we can do it, so.
Yeah, I understand. I'll leave that up to staff as to whether or not you think that's appropriate or not based on all the factors, because it's hard to know what to do there since it's an outlier in that way.
But when
Yeah, probably all these things may not be applicable anyway directly for alternate school, right? So out of this 10 criteria, probably many things may not be applicable directly for alternative school is concerned, right? So,
I'm sorry.
no, for alternative schools, probably many of these criteria may be, you may not be, or you already said that about certain things like enrollment, for example, it cannot, so like that many.
It'll just result in when we run the alternative schools, they're going to have probably come out with a lower score because some of that we do control. So we know they're not in declining enrollment. We know that they don't have less than 2 kinders because we actually control that level. So they'll just have a lower score than the other schools. But I think it is a good practice to run them through to see.
Okay.
All right, I think we can go ahead and continue then. Thanks.
So the next one is our 10-day enrollment count. We did want to bring this forward. I do want to share that at our 10-day count, we had student enrollment at 14,004. We actually were staffed with a projected enrollment at 15,100 for this year. So that is a loss of 1,000 students, which is alarming because that is much higher than we anticipated. It is actually lower than our projected enrollment was going to be at 22-23. Looking at, where did our students go? We know that the entire Bay Area has experienced a declining enrollment. We know that many families have moved out of the area. We did not expect it to be to this extent. So it is a little bit of a shock to see how low we are. It does lead us to believe we're on a faster rate of our projected declining enrollment. And so we'll continue to work that as we move forward. Leslie's going to cover the next couple slides and show really the declining enrollment is across the entire district. There is not one school that it hasn't suffered from over the course of the year. So wanted to share what those numbers are as well.
Great. So on the next slide, so this shows our enrollment at each of our elementary school sites. The color in orange, or the number in orange, is the number of classes at the school sites. And then you see the bar graph going from our smallest program or school, home study, to our largest school, Stockholmeyer. One of the things that I'll add to this is that we'll see a change in these numbers slightly, maybe not in the classroom numbers, unless we determine that we need to do some consolidation based on small class sizes. But we are in the process of continuing to move students through our open enrollment process, either to a school of choice, a neighborhood school of choice, or alternative school. So and one thing that I'll call out, if you look at the CLIP number, for example, it shows 423 students in 18 classes, where you will see over time, we have open spaces in CLIP. We won't grow in the number of classes, but the number of students may increase over the next couple weeks. And then you would see a decline potentially in other neighborhood schools. And so now that we have our alternative program, or our home study independent study program up and running and fully staffed, we're able to begin looking at other open enrollment shifts. If you go to the next slide shows our middle school enrollment, also, which has declined across the district. We did not show the number of classes because we don't staff based on number of classes. We staff based on a 25-to-1 ratio. And so we did not incorporate those numbers, but if that's information you would like, there's just our staffing numbers at that. We can provide that to you at another time. Any questions about enrollment before we move on to?
So for
I have a
middle
question
school-
also.
All right, great. Thanks, Phyllis. So we'll get Satish first and then
Yeah.
we'll catch you.
So in elementary school, we have provided the data for home study, 157. How about the middle school?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing the question.
The slide number 7, we have the first one is home study, right? For the elementary school,
Correct.
but middle school, do you have?
So that one's a little bit more difficult, and I can get you data on regards to the home study program. So the 157 and the 8 teachers are students that are doing the full home study independent study program. If a middle school student is choosing to take 1 or 2 classes at the middle school, they actually are shown on the following slide. they are counted on the middle school's attendance in regards to their attendance. So our home study program, the number of students we have in home study is larger than 157, but the difference are the students that are taking middle school classes, either 1 to 2 classes of their choice.
Okay.
I think one of the pieces, the difference between the K-5 independent study, home study and the middle school students are allowed, they can be in the independent home study, but they could also take 2 classes at their home school if they chose to go in person for up to 2 classes as well. And so when they do that, they still remain on that middle school's
I see. Okay.
attendance.
Okay. Got it.
Do you have another question? or-
No, I think,
Okay.
okay, so-
Let me just check Lori really quick, just so we're going in the same order. Did you have any questions on enrollment, Lori?
Don't think so. I'm mulling one, but go ahead.
Okay, well, we might come around. Phyllis, so please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Stacy, you mentioned the additional 1,000 kids dropped in enrollment was a surprise for us, and I'm sure it was a surprise for the demographer as well. So could you talk a little bit about how we're working with the demographer going forward? I know nobody has a crystal ball, I get that. But is there a way to work with the demographer to come a little closer on these projections than 1,000 kids?
Well, and I think, based on, we are using Precision Insight, the numbers that we had provided to them was prior to the COVID. We were expecting a loss due to the COVID. What I am guessing, and we'll explore more, is that there may have been families that continued to be enrolled in our school last year and may have moved out of the area, but we're able to do that because of the distance learning. And so we're almost experiencing a year and a half of our declining enrollment. What we've are working with Decision Insight for is to be able to provide them these new updated numbers that we have, so that they can run updated enrollment projections for us. Instead of waiting till, typically we do that in December, we're asking to do that now. So we should have some updated projections probably within 3 to 4 weeks that we'll be bringing back forward as well. Because again, this 14,004 really is reflective of where we thought we were going to be in 22, 23, actually a little bit lower than where we thought we were going to be in 2020, 22, 23. So we do want to see what those outlying years are going to look like as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry.
All right, thanks, Phyllis. And then Sylvia? No? Okay. I have, I guess one question is, back on August 12th, the presentation had included a spreadsheet. I don't know if y'all remember, broken down by each individual school. It was like, it went out from 2022 to 2029. It was like, there was a slide with names of schools and you click on one of the links and it took you to a spreadsheet. On that one, the 2022 enrollment, it seems pegged at 12,151. And you talked about we're expecting 15,000 this year. So I'm wondering, am I reading these numbers wrong or?
If I'm remembering the slide correctly, the enrollment that was showed at that time omitted the alternative school numbers.
Oh, that's correct.
That-
Okay.
that was the
so
additional
that's right,
number
that's
on
right,
there,
That's what
so
it was. I remember
That was
that.
misleading. We do
Right.
apologize.
Okay, and then, no, that's me. You did say that, so it's, thank you for being so gracious, Stacy. Then I think then a follow-up to, I think an answer you gave about getting the new updates from Decision Insights. You said 3 to 4 weeks. So is there any way to get that before September 23rd or not really?
Probably not.
Okay.
We did reach out to them, that we are supplying all the information that we have with them. We can certainly ask, but it did sound like it would be 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, I didn't have any other questions. Lori, I just want to check to go around. Anybody?
I just want to, a quick follow-up to Phyllis's question and your answer, Stacy, about potentially that we had some kids that moved out in the last third of the school year last year, but continued to finish the school year with us. That does not, can you clarify that that does not affect our funding that we received for last year?
It does not. It does not.
Thank you.
So I will just follow up on my previous question. Sorry for keep going around on that. But do we have middle schoolers, anybody who's like completely or 100% independent study, or everybody is connected to any of the schools, or there should be few, right?
I believe we do have middle schoolers that go
So
the
that
completely.
means this data probably we have some delta here, I guess.
I'm going to
Correct.
defer to Leslie on that because I
Correct. So
believe so.
we do have home study students that are middle schoolers that are full-time home study, independent study students.
Okay.
I can pull that number for you and provide it in a weekly update. It just
Yeah,
takes a
yeah,
little
that's
bit of
good enough.
calculation.
Yeah, just I do not want to miss the total number. That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Is it, is my logic correct, though, that if the update on our previous item about the number going to Edgenuity for middle school was something like 66, that we're talking, if there is a delta, it's less than 100? Is that a fair assumption on
That would
that?
be fair.
It's,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? If not, we'll continue then. All right, thank you.
We can go up a couple slides to the middle school. One more. One more. There we go. So what we're showing here is really just taking our 10-day enrollment of our middle schools that we just shared with you. We're showing what the projections for our 5 middle schools are in 2025, and then the projection even out further into the 2029. And as you can see across the board, our 5 middle schools do continue. They all experience the decline. The question that was asked is, what is the ideal size of a middle school? And it's a little harder to quantify than an elementary school. You can look at throughout the United States, the average can be as low as 550 to 600 middle school size. In California, it's just over 600 is the average size of a middle school. It is deceiving because you do have middle schools that are extremely small. You have some middle schools that are extremely large. And so really doing the exploration of what does an ideal middle school really mean. So, and we can go to the next slide if you want. Is what is it that we're able to offer to our students into a middle school? And so when middle schools become too large, it becomes a challenge. Our students lose their sense of identity. When you have those large 1,400, 1,500, it really becomes difficult to allow the students at that age to grow and to get some of that social emotional support. When they get too small, then it becomes very isolated. A teacher could only be teaching 3 subjects, have nobody to collaborate with. The students don't have as many opportunities in clubs and extracurricular sports. So it really is hard to determine what is that ideal spot for it. So wanted to show over the course of the years, if we look at our 3 middle schools, our 5 middle schools, as they decrease in size, we took what the average would be of the 5. And you can see that the average continues 973 to the 837 until that 10th year out is 688. When looking at our middle schools currently, there is a sense of the conversation of, do we value 2 electives at every middle school? That plays into the conversation, and that is certainly one of our future aspects that we want to have more conversation about. And one of our desires is to be able to offer 2 electives at all of our middle school. We currently only offer 2 electives truly at one middle school, our CMS, because it's a 7-period day. The other schools may offer an additional period for some students, but not for all. So that is a direction that we want to go. So as the school sizes continue to decline, when you start to get around 700, you're still able to offer 2 electives. You're still able to offer, teachers can have multiple collaborative colleagues to work with. You are still able to offer multi-tracks within a math program or an English program. When you start to fall under 700, that really is where it becomes challenging, because you just don't have the number of sections to offer that flexibility. You don't have the number of sections to be able to really support single subject teachers that are going to teach some of these electives. So we feel pretty strongly that at 700, we're still able to offer all of those areas. So when we look at our projected numbers, we really don't reach that area of probably concern until the outlying years of year 8 and 9. Again, that's a long time to project out. We all recognize that those are projections. And so when we look at where we are for the 4 to 5 years out, we can still be within that number. We may need to do some balancing of our enrollment or our boundaries. We know that our high school district is also experiencing declining enrollment and may be interested in adjusting some of their boundaries or allowing different feeder patterns for us as well. So that will be one of our focuses that we continue to look at. So I guess if we can go to the next slide, there really is not the answer to the ideal size of a middle school. We know where we don't want to be. as far as the small size, we know where we don't want to be as far as the large size, but in between there is a lot of a room for some flexibility. So from anywhere from 700 to 1100, we can operate a very strong, robust program for our students. And so that's probably the most that we can stand on at this point during our conversations is we don't want to get too small. We don't want to get too large. We'll continue to look at those numbers as we go forward. So unfortunately, I don't have an ideal number to come back to with, but I did want to give just that insight as we look at what's available to students and wanting to continue to have that conversation as we move forward, because we've touched on the two elective concepts, the values, but we have never really sat down and had a really robust conversation about that. And I hope to have that very near in the future. And with that, that is just the reminder that as we move forward through all of our challenging conversations, we still focus on the whole child. We still want to be able to offer the strong core academics. We want to be able to offer enrichment programs. We want to be able to have that support for all students through our multi-tiered support. And then we really do want to bring back those district-wide celebrations and events and beginning exploring that so that every student at every campus gets to have that opportunity. So that is it, and we're open to questions or comments.
All right, great, thank you. So we'll do another round of clarifying questions from the board. If I see some hands up here, if you would like to speak, there's a comment card on our website. Please fill that out, and we'll call you when it's your turn to speak. So the mechanism isn't to raise your hands now, but when we call on you. So thank you. With that, then let's go in the same order. Satish, did you have anything?
Yeah. So I have only one question. So in the slide number 10. The projection, right? The projected 25, 26 and 29, 30. Is it the previous projection, what are we had, or based on this 10-day stuff?
It is our previous projection. So those could go lower
Could
when
go
we
lower.
rerun the decision insight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thanks, Satish. Lori, did you?
So as you were doing the digging into the concept of ideal middle schools is I guess what I run into when I start looking at all of that is middle school isn't the same everywhere. Some places define middle school as small as 2 grades, and some places just define middle school as large as 4 grades. So is there anywhere that you ran into that aggregates any of that? Because I haven't found it yet.
I have not found it, and I did
All
a
right.
tremendous amount of research on it.
Okay, so so when the literature that's out there that's talking about something like 500, 550 size could be referring to just a 7-8 concept as opposed to a 6-7-8 or a 6-7-8-9
Could
concept.
possibly, but it's not
It's not always
highlighted that
clear.
way.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks. And then Phyllis,
No further questions, thanks.
great, thank you. And Sylvia.
No questions.
Okay, and I have no questions either. So
Can we go to the last slide before we move on to the last
Sure.
one? So I did just want to point out that, the statement on the bottom is that coming September 23rd, we will be bringing forward our recommendation. And just a reminder to everyone, because I know our community gets busy and we have a lot of other things on our mind, but just a reminder of why we're bringing forward on September 23rd is that last October, we had a report from the CAC that did come forward with recommendations of different scenarios of school closures. At that point, we put it on pause because we did pursue the parcel tax, which unfortunately did not pass. With the failure of the parcel tax last spring, we again had the conversation here at the board meeting that we were going to have to pursue looking at closing of schools, and our commitment was to come back in the fall, no later than September, with a recommendation from the staff for school closures. We're now here in September, so we are committed. We're on our timeline, so we will be bringing back a recommendation on September 23rd for you to review and discuss. So I just wanted to share that.
all right, great, thank you. Thanks for highlighting that. That's an important point. Aaron, do we have any speakers for this item?
Yes, we do. We have 7 public
7.
comments.
Okay, let's bring them up 3 at a time, I guess. Okay. So who are our first 3
Yes,
speakers?
the first 3, we have Julia Chen, Mark Laundy, and Satosh Rao.
Okay, Julia, Mark, and Santosh. If you could raise your hands, please. I see Mark, I see Santosh, and Julia, if you're, and there you, Julie. Okay, okay, yes, I see you. So please go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, so I have a question on the alternative. So first, I am a parent from Lincoln Elementary School, and I have a question on the criteria 9, which is about alternative solutions which can generate additional revenue. I believe some board members already covered it in your questions, so thank you. And I just want to confirm that. So the answer is the answer will be binary. So is that just leasable or not leasable? Is that the right understanding? That's my first question. And then then my following question is, if that's the case, won't it bring some question that is that reasonable? Because it's hard to believe some site couldn't be leased, right? If you, as long as your lease price is low enough. So yeah, that's my question about the criteria 9. And I do have another question on like if we make a decision of the school consolidation, then when we will execute it. Yeah, that's all my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julie. Okay, let's bring up our next speaker. I believe it's Mark.
Yeah, hi, Jerry. I'm actually going to defer my comments this evening. You may have my permission to end the meeting 3 minutes early tonight.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate that, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks. Okay, and then we have Santosh next. So please go ahead.
Yes, firstly, I wanted to say that I have submitted comments on other agenda items and not been called upon. So if you have a chance, it'd be good to go back to those questions and have a chance to speak to those comments that were submitted that were not called on. What I'd like to say on this particular item is I see us talking about a criteria for closing schools or consolidating schools. And I have not seen any criteria that precedes this that firstly looks at cutting costs outside of the option of closing schools. Where are the criteria for whether we have exhausted all options, such as eliminating all recs for directors that have been opened recently, eliminating non-educational exec roles and redundant roles, reducing costs given the loss of 1,000 students in staffing, cutting down costs on things like 200K for a few cameras, and all of the different ways in which money is being spent in every agenda meeting. So we go from meeting after meeting where you're spending money to this next meeting where you're talking about consolidating schools. And this is probably the brightest school district in Silicon Valley. You're in the possibly the smartest geographical location amidst the smartest community and the smartest set of school district. And it's hard to believe that our smartest administration is completely missing the linkage between other costs that need to be cut before we have this conversation. And even as we have this conversation, that criteria seems completely disconnected from what we ought to be looking at. How is it applicable to look at whether there are English learners or not? What has it got to do with the criteria for closing a school? And same thing for some of the other criteria. I urge this board, you are no different than all of us. You are parents, you are residents, you are voted in by us, and you are the guardians of the history and legacy of the school district. And I urge you to ask smart questions. The onus is on you to defend the school district from closures and to first cut every cost you can before you talk about this criteria. What I would have liked to hear is every one of you ask the question, why are we looking at this criteria? And why are we rushing to a September decision? Where is the September deadline to cut costs? Why are we opening a CBO? Why are we opening a director of communications, a director of BizOps? Each one of those is 300 to 400K. Parcel A was 8 million in costs. Your agendas have already spent 2 million in costs that you've added on. So let's have a conversation that justifies that this is a school district of the brightest and the best.
All right, thank you, Santosh, and apologize for not calling earlier. I don't know if we can get those comments to the board later or.
They will be shared with all board members.
Great, thank you. All right, so thank you for that, Santosh. Let's bring up the next three speakers, please.
Sure, we have Atal Apti, Ling Kwan, and Molly Lincoln.
Okay. All right, I see a toll here, and so if you, the other folks, if you could please raise your hand so we can see you and unmute your mic, that would be great. And so Atul, please go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak. So I think I have a couple of things to talk about. One is alternate schools. We actually had this discussion with many of you before as well. So in the rubric that you described, Stacey, you were saying that some of the criteria for alternate schools had sort of been pegged and controlled already, and so they would automatically score low. And I think that doesn't that, like, to the rest of you, to the board members, doesn't that seem like seem like partial treatment to alternate schools? You're basically sort of manipulating the rubric so that these schools don't score high. So I would say that, if the criteria is not important enough, or if you feel like you had to peg certain things so that alternate schools would stabilize enrollment, why don't you take the criteria out completely for all of them to put all schools on a level playing field? So that's the first thing. And then I think just a point that I heard earlier about, potentially CLIP not, you don't want to run some criteria for CLIP because it's unfair. But then isn't Maya Rolls on the same site as CLIPS? Like I'm not a parent from Maya Rolls, but it just seems fundamentally broken to me if you're thinking that a neighborhood school, you can run the criteria for them, but CLIPS, which is on the same program, on the same site, you think it's unfair to run the criteria for them. I fundamentally don't understand that, and I feel like it shows some sort of a bias in favor of alternate schools. And I may be wrong, but that's pretty obvious from that comparison. The other thing I would say is, and we spoke to some of you about this, alternate schools are purely open enrollment. So they are 100% open enrollment. Neighborhood schools are only based on neighborhood enrollment in terms of these rubrics. Why don't you also look at open enrollment wait lists and add those to the rubric to to show sort of what sort of trends there were? Because again, you're comparing apples to oranges. Alternate schools have 0 neighborhoods, right? Their neighborhood enrollment is 0. Their open enrollment is 100%. Why don't you use the same criteria for neighborhood schools? And then my final point on this thing about demographers and being down by 1,000. And Stacey and Leslie, I think if you remember when we met at Dilworth, we did mention, demographer data is you take it with a pinch of salt. Why don't we look at the previous 12 years of data that we have, make projections based on that? 10 to 12 years of data is a good estimate for figuring out what an enrollment trend is going to look like. Why are you relying on demographers? And they're like election forecasters. They've clearly got it wrong. They've gone off by 1,000. So why are you still relying on their projections to decide something as important as school closures? Why don't you just look at historical trends and figure out which schools are stable, which ones are not? Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Aaron, let's bring up our next speaker, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a parent of a Lincoln student, and I specifically wanted to understand some of the rubrics that you mentioned about school consolidation. So we can see very clearly the future projection on the enrollment has been the highest factor, the factor that has highest weight. So I want to focus my questions on this one. So you already mentioned that that's based off some analysis that we did last year from CAC. So I have a couple of questions I would like you to address for me. So first of all, we already know that we already see some analysis from last year from CAC, which has some projection number contradictory to the historical trends we already see. For example, Lincoln, like Kennedy, you just show, which are the ones that have high current enrollment, but low future enrollment in 5 years. So specifically, what are the assumptions that's driving that kind of like decrease across the time, we would like to see those details in very like the Excel model behind it, wanted to have access to that to help us justify that, understand that. And also the other question related to that is that we're not even sure if there's equal representation of all schools in that CAC studies. So that could potentially lead to a misleading enrollment projection in future years. The other question I have is what is the reason that we're giving more consideration to the future projection instead of the current enrollment number? So when we talk about closing a school that has a very high current enrollment, we are talking about real immediate impact to those families. However, when you talk about future projection, that's just a number based on some assumptions, and it could be wrong. In fact, based on the enrollment projection that you provided and last year, the 2020 enrollment actual has already proven some projection very wrong. For example, Lincoln. So Lincoln outperformed the projection, while some other schools, not to say the name, but underperform a lot, while we are seeing those unfair assumptions has been baked in to land at the future projection number, and that projection has been used to the most highest weight in this current very important consideration of school closure. So with all of that said, I just require a full disclosure on the details of that projection, because that's definitely the biggest part impacting our current discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Aaron, our next speaker, please.
Molly Lincoln, if you could please raise your hand.
Hello.
Yes, hi, welcome.
Oh, hi. This is also a parent from Lincoln. So thank you for the opportunity. First, I also want to request the spot to give more details on the modeling details, especially on the projections. Second question is about the criteria. So I still find that most of the criteria are very subjective. I see many quantitative elements in that, but fundamentally, some of those quantitative elements still depends on the qualitative measures. For example, how to keep the neighborhood together. How do you define that? How do you measure that? How do you evaluate that? So for all those 2 points, I hope the board can do a better job communicating all those details, decision-making process to the whole community. I think we can do a better job communicating all those details through better communication methods. For example, emails to everyone who is registered in this community, so that we can read those details in advance. So we are all working parents in this community. We have a full-time job, and our second job is using our night time to review all those details and to thinking through the logics. This is taking our extra times. We hope to get more extra time reviewing those details in advance, so that we can together build a more responsible community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then I think, do we have one more speaker?
Yes, we
Aaron?
have one more speaker, Young-Hoo Mon.
Okay, so please raise your hand. There, okay. Okay, please go ahead. You'll need to unmute your microphone, please.
Hi, board members. I'm a parent in Lincoln and the Kennedy community. Yeah, I have the same question for the Kennedy projected enrollment. I think it's not trustful. Kennedy has 220 students enrollment decrease, while the other 3 middle schools have only 16 to 100 students enrollment difference. So in the similar neighborhood, how could there be such big difference? And how could we trust the 5 10 years enrollment projection? Also, another question is, since the total CSD students enrollment is down to 14,000, can you compare the local tax funding option and the state funding option, especially the funding per student? Because this is the big difference, only 14,000 students in CSD now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. That should be it, right, Aaron? Just double checking.
Correct.
Great, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the board for round of, I guess, any other clarifying questions or comments. Satish, did you have anything?
No, I don't have anything.
All right.
I'm good.
No? Okay. Phyllis, did you have anything? No? Okay. And Sylvia?
I've been thinking about this process. Not a clarifying question, though. Is that-
I think
is
as
that
long as it's not a
okay?
discussion, it's okay, right? Just
It is.
feedback for, yeah. Right.
Because this discussion has been going on for over a year now, right? And so I think there's information that we've received as a board and community at different times. And so like some of those things, I think, because we're not going to review every single thing at every single board meeting, because that would end up taking hours upon hours. And the information is in the board docs and things like that. But I wonder if it would be, I think it would be helpful for me as well as maybe the community to have some sort of refresher. I don't know if that's possible at like maybe before we get to that September 23rd meeting. Because it has been such a long process with so many details and so many reports and so much data. And if you're not at every single meeting, you may have missed, some of that data or something like that. And so it just might be, I don't know if there's a way to do some sort of highlights or something like that.
So we can certainly look at making all the data available on the website as well with our dashboard. We have all of our board agendas there as well. We also are having a town hall meeting that we are going to be sharing with our community prior to the 23rd, that we could ensure that we cover some of these areas. But I think to your point, it's been 2 years worth of a lot of data and a lot of information. And, purposely, we've spent these last 4 board meetings trying to refresh all of that. When we do bring back the recommendation on the 23rd, we will be assured that we will bring data back that for everything that we say why we're doing it. We will have data as well that we can point that out. We recognize that this conversation is difficult for families. It's emotional. It brings up a lot of different thoughts and feelings. And so it's never easy. What we want to do is make it as disruptive, as undisruptive as possible to our families. We want to, once an announcement is made, our focus is really going to be on the transition after that. What is going to happen so that families feel reassured that they're going to be welcomed into a new neighborhood school. They're going to be part of that. That will be a lot of the focus that we want to spend our time on as well, because it is hard to hear that a school may be closing. We understand that, but we also know that we've talked about it. We've shared so much data. I don't know that even within the next 2 weeks, we would have enough time to go back and recapture all of those conversations that we've had over the course of the 2 years. We can certainly try to wrap them into a short presentation, but there has been a lot. We can certainly look at that. And typically I don't answer questions during public comments, but the one speaker did prompt me to remind me that there was one piece I did leave out when I was talking about our September 23rd recommendation coming forward, and the recognizing that nothing is going to be done with school closures at the earliest until the 22-23 school year. That was purposely why we set up September, bringing forward the recommendation to give October the time for the board to deliberate on, and then that gives us the rest of the year to make the transitions and to work with staff and students and families to make that transition as smooth as possible. So I did want to share that piece of information back out.
Great. Thanks, Sylvia. As for myself, I have, I guess, some couple of comments and 2 requests for information. I think just building on what Sylvia said, I think there has been a lot of information. I think for us here, we sit through these couple hours every 2 weeks. So I actually have a mental model of where the various documents are. And I think that's, if unless you've sat through it, you actually don't have that. And even for me, I actually have a little Microsoft Word file where I put links to these documents just so I can find it. So I think maybe building on what Sylvia's saying, I understand it's hard to summarize everything, but if we could pull some of the links together, the CAC packet, for instance, a lot of information in there. Decision insights, there's both a projection, but there's a nice white paper on their methodology of how they did the projections. And I think the tricky part here is because things have evolved, a lot of my links have become obsolete. I think that's the hard part about curating this, because we've done so many projections and so many things, and the hard part is actually getting the most accurate version. So I'll just add on to what Sylvia said, that might be a useful resource for folks. And certainly even for myself who sit through these, I refer to that. So that's one. I have, I guess, two information for our next meeting is going to be the one where we start having discussions. So there's two pieces of information I like to request from staff. One is I like to better understand the wait lists at the different neighborhood schools. I think in the past meetings, we've been given the wait list for alternative schools with a breakdown of what neighborhood schools they're from. I understand that the wait lists are deduplicated because people can get onto multiple lists, but nevertheless, I like to see that. I think for me, it's, well, anyway, I'll talk about why later. So that's one request. I'll talk about why later, 2 weeks from now, not like later. And then the second request is the process we're going through right now. We'll put these schools in some kind of ranking. I understand that the numbers are not precise and therefore it's more of a rough neighborhood of where they are on the spectrum. But for me, there's also the question of then where do we make the cut, right? What's the threshold for deciding to close? And Occur had, I think at the last meeting, the board advance talked about the shortfall, the 19 million shortfall that we would have had we not had the declining enrollment. So I think for me, that sets some bounds, but of course then, the revenue goes down, but we're not selling as many units. And so therefore, right, there's a variable cost, there's a fixed cost. And I think better understanding the rationale of where we decide to cut along that spectrum, whether it's 1 school, 5 schools, however many schools that is, understanding why we're making that threshold, what it is, and frankly, what happens to that money that we're doing, that's kind of important to me also. So 2 pieces of information, please. One on the wait list, the open enrollment wait lists for the neighborhood schools, and then sort of how we determine that financial threshold. Okay, so those are my 2. Anyone have anything else that I can add?
I'll just, plus one, I think the idea of a high-level overview and resource for where to find things. I think we hear a lot too about sort of the piece of coming into the conversation midstream and maybe not understanding the history. So I think if there could be a link to or some more information about just the big picture, what is the view from 10,000 feet of, where this district has been over the course of, the last 20 years on the way up, what was our configuration like, and where are we at this point down in our enrollment? Because I think, there was a time that this district was sized exactly where we are now, 14,000. There was a time where this district was sized where we're headed. And, I think the past shouldn't dictate where we go in the future, but it's just, I think, one more piece to help people understand, what is a reasonable expectation for a district our size now and the size that we're projected to be, because I think that gets lost sometimes in the conversations and in the questions. And then I guess my only other request, Stacy, I think you're absolutely on the right track with acknowledging the feelings in all of this. And so I hope that, I guess I'm just going to say, please keep doing that. Please keep acknowledging how challenging this is for our community, for families that are in our schools now, because there is not a school site that won't be affected by the decisions we make. I think that's going to get lost in the conversation. And I think also that, you know, that all of us, the community, our staff, and those of us serving on this board are just trying to figure out how to move forward through this, and that it will be hard for everyone. And sitting on this side, just, you know, wanting the community to know how challenging it is to try and navigate the magnitude of the decisions that we're being asked to participate in for the benefit of the children of this community. So that's my only comments on this.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Anyone else before we close out this item? Okay. All right. Let's move off of 12.1. The next, then it's the 12.2. Let's see who's kicking us off on that one.
Kerr's going to cover this item.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The purpose of this item is to be transparent and let the board and the public know the additional reserves that the district is maintaining as per the board policy that was passed a few years ago, and as per the directive of the board to the staff, that we'll be maintaining the 3% required state reserve and an additional 3% for the current year, and then additional 3% for the next year, which is 22-23, and increase that amount to 4% in the following year, the third year out. This information report just tells you we are able to maintain the reserves that the board has authorized or directed the staff to do.
Great, thank you. All right, let's start with a round of clarifying questions. Finny, Satish, did you have anything?
I don't have anything, but is it something different like than what we discussed earlier? No, something your is
What's
it
that?
Akur? The reserve part of it, like whatever we had a plan right earlier. We had a plan actually before.
Yes,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is based on
So it's
the-
pretty much it is. We are not changing anything from there.
No, we are not changing anything. It is
Okay.
as per the board's policy and as per the board's directive that we are maintaining the
Okay.
3%, which is a 6% reserve for the current year, 6% for the following year, and then the third year out, it'll be 4 and 3, which will be 7%.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Then I think it's pretty much same like whatever we have discussed earlier. So I'm okay.
Great, thanks, Satish. Lori?
I have no questions.
Okay, Phyllis?
No questions here.
No question. And Sylvia?
It's been a minute since we had this conversation. I think it was it last school year? Was it before summer? And so at the time, I think we had like 2 meetings about it. Would it be possible, Kurt, to maybe do a quick explanation of the change? I mean, or a recap or something like that. Right? I know you weren't there, so maybe Stacy or could do a recap for the community to just kind of explain, you know, especially as we're looking at the numbers and why we're increasing that 1% in the third year because of the possible changes with
Yeah,
like
see,
funding and things
I
like
think the
that.
reason behind that was as you're fluctuating between a revenue limit and a basic aid district, it was the board's intention at the point that to elevate it to a higher level because the state's mandate is you can go up to 10%. We are still within that, but still slowly inching upwards so that they are fiscally stable. And that was the purpose originally, and I think that still remains the same.
I could add to that just that, you know, our upcoming items also applies to it as well, because we were really looking at how soon could we get to that 10% without completely depleting our general fund. And so that was the decision that we looked at a couple different options. We could have raised the reserve immediately and put 7% in this year. I think we gave 3 different options and landed on starting out very slowly, looking at a sale of a property to be put into the reserve, and then knowing that third year out, we really did need to start increasing.
And the main kind of thrust, if I recall correctly from our conversation, was that we wanted to have the additional stability, because if we're switching from ADA, from attendance to community funded, then the volatility of the
Yes.
funding isn't there's more volatility, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
to create more of a buffer of reserve so that we can continue to offer services and pay teachers and all those kinds of things.
Correct. And we know that we'll slowly ease into the community funded, so we won't see a tremendous greater amount of money coming in initially. It'll grow over the years, and so that we did feel secure in saying we could build it up over the course of the 3 to 4 years and not have to do it all in 1 year.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks. And I don't have any questions myself. So let's check are there any public comments on this item?
No, there are not.
No comments. Okay, just one last check then to see if anyone had any other questions or comments on this. Can't see Phyllis. So hold on. Oh, let's just check. Phyllis, are you good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm good.
Yes, you're right. Okay. You're off the monitor here, but I have you here, so we're
Okay,
good. Thank
somebody
you.
just put me back on. Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So, oh yeah, you just went, so you're good. Okay, and I'm good too. All right, well, thank you. Thanks, Akir. All right. So let's move on to 12.3. This is about the waiver for appointment of a district advisory committee.
So this is a follow-up from our conversation as we were talking about the budget and made the decision as a board that we would pursue the sale of our Montebello property. Montebello property was acquired by CUS back in 2009. We have never used it as a functioning school site to service our students. We've attempted to find leases over the course of the last 10 to 11 years. We've had an occasional vendor that's came in for a couple months, but we have not been able to sustain having concurrent leasing going on throughout the time. Meanwhile, we are required to maintain the property, so there has been a cost to the district. Our decision had been to sell Montebello, knowing that the sale from the property, that money could then be put into our reserve to avoid having to take it out of the general fund to build our reserve. So based on board directive and saying, let's see how quickly we can move forward on this, we pursued one of the aspects when you do sell property is there is a state department that you look at forming a 7-Eleven committee that looks at the use of the surplus property. What we are asking for in this waiver, because this property has never been used by our school district to serve students, as well as it was part of a discussion last fall with the CAC when they looked at our leases and our surplus property, how could we look at other revenue sources coming in at the time that we're having the closing schools. We wanted to pursue with the state through this waiver, an application to say, could we waive doing the 7-Eleven committee and just move straight forward to selling of the property? And then there are other steps that you have to put in place once you decide to sell the property, who gets offered for the sale first. But it would, the 7-Eleven process takes approximately a year. There are some requirements with the committee, but again, this waiver, we are saying we did a comparable process with our CAC in addition to this property not being used by the district, sitting there vacant for all these years. With coming forward tonight, we did the public hearing to allow public to speak on that. Part of this process does require us as well to reach out to our 3 unions, and we'll also reach out to our budget advisory. We're sharing this information with them, and we're asking the unions, do they agree with our decision to go with the waiver? Do they disagree, or are they neutral? We did have one of our unions that's in agreement of it, and we had our 2 classified unions that are not agreeable to us going through the waiver and want us to go through the 7-Eleven process. This doesn't stop or deter us being able to do the application. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be accepted. It is really that collaborative that we've reached out and talked to them. We understand where they're coming forward. So by your approval of this waiver, we still have to go through the application process with the state. The state will determine and let us know whether they approve the waiver. So just because we're approving the waiver as a board, that just gives us permission then to apply to the state for them to consider. So I wanted to be really clear on that. Just by us signing a waiver doesn't make it happen. It's a process that we still go forward with.
Great, thank you. All right, let's questions, Satish.
Yeah, I think a couple of questions on this. Okay, one is we are making sure this waiver is specifically for this purpose and one time kind of, right? That I just want
Yes,
to-
this is only for the Montebello. And again, we only felt very strong on this because we have not used it as a site and it was referenced in the CAC. It wouldn't apply for any other school closures that we go through. We would do the 7-Eleven, the surplus property process with those.
Okay, good. Second one is, other than this waiver, like we are not bypassing or we are not going away from any of the other process, right? This is just basically that 7-Eleven committee kind of, that's the only thing we are bypassing. But the other procedural stuff or statutory requirements or anything, we are still meeting.
Yes, we just want to not have to form the committee to have the discussion about the use of the surplus property. We want to bypass that and then move into when we sell the property, there's additional steps that who we would make available the property to first, and follow that complete process.
And the reason behind that is just to accelerate the whole thing, not instead of delaying it. That's a main reason, right? 7-Eleven committee, we are bypassing it.
If I understood.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is the reason for bypassing or getting the waiver is mainly to accelerate the process.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Lori?
And the backstop, should the state board not hear the waiver, or if we decide to not go through with the waiver at any point during the process, would be to roll this in with any other 7-Eleven work that we have to do.
We would convene the 7-Eleven and begin that process, yes, if the waiver does not go through.
Bypass the committee process. It was previously done with the Citizen Oversight Committee, right? That's what we are telling the state. We're not saying that we never did anything or we don't want to do it. We basically modeled this in a different way. And that's one of the reasons we're going to give the state allocation board, which is the authority to approve this. So it's not a bypassing of the process. It is just that it's already been done. It's been vetted. It came in front of the board before. So we have the allowance now to go to the board and say, we have done something similar to this. Now we are requesting that we can get a waiver for this process.
And can you just very briefly define what a 7-Eleven is, just to review? We know, but can you just review for anybody who might be listening what a 7-Eleven is?
So the 7-Eleven is really a district advisory committee. Where it gets the name 7-Eleven is because you have a minimum of 7 and no more than 11. And there's a specific representation of those 7 to 11 committee members, and they look at the use of the surplus property.
And so that goes with why Occur is saying we ran a similar process, but not that exact process with our CAC, but that we have the elements now to put together a valid and complete application for a waiver.
Yes. So when a 7-Eleven or a district advisory committee were to be convened, what they look at is really many of the same scope and areas that our CAC looked at. They look at the capacity of schools, the use of the schools, the transition strategies. They look at our alternative solutions been explored to not having to sell the property. So all of those elements were really part of those criteria and tasks that were given to the CAC that we felt like they addressed.
Thank you. That's it.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Lori. And Phyllis?
Yeah, I don't have any questions, Jerry. I just have a comment. It seems to me that the fact that we've never used the Montebello property for any district use, and we've had a number of discussions with the board, the current board and previous boards over the years, about how that property might be used by the district, and nothing has ever surfaced that makes any sense. I mean, the location doesn't make sense, the size doesn't make sense, the expense to renovate it, and the fact that we've been through it with CAC, I think points to hopefully the state board saying, yes, we've done our due diligence and we don't need to go any further with any sort of a community process. So that's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Phyllis. Sylvia?
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay, great. Thanks. The question I have is actually sort of a different one, which is I did a little reading about this. And my understanding is that the Senate Bill 820 that was passed last fall amended education code so that properties that are, it's section 17391, until July 1st of 2024, properties that haven't been used for secondary education. Basically, Montebello fits that. It basically says the governing board has the right to just elect not to do. So I don't know if that was ever looked at. So I'm questioning if we even need this waiver to begin with, given that it was EDCO was amended to.
So we have gone to our legal counsel on that, and
Okay.
that did not come up that we would be excluded through that legislation. So I
Would
can
you mind
review it
just
again.
checking explicitly? So that's section 17391, paragraph C.
Yeah,
It-
I'm
there-
not aware of that one. So
Okay, so it's Senate Bill
certainly
820. It was passed September of last year. But I'll just make a comment then. And I'm also interested, you mentioned that our two of the unions did not agree with this. Could you talk a bit more about their reasonings, if they share that with us?
They really didn't share reasoning, so it would be more my speculation as to why, and I wouldn't feel comfortable just with speculation, but very, very comfortable going back and meeting with them and having a deeper conversation with them.
Okay, all right. And then just one more, which is, so I think it's our assertion, and I agree with what Phyllis said. Certainly, we've talked about it here and all this, but the CAC report that I remember, I didn't think it explicitly mentioned Montebello. I think one of the scenarios talked about we should sell surplus property, and maybe Montebello probably came up verbally, but I guess I didn't feel like I had enough information during the presentation back then on how much they really looked at this whole Montebello thing. I mean, I'll just say for the record, I am in favor of selling this, and I do want to, to expedite this. But so I guess question one is whether or not we even need to do this according to SB 820. So if we could look at this, but then if we can't, I'd like to hear a bit more about maybe the CAC and how much this was looked at in that process.
So it wasn't specifically looked at in the CAC. It was the realm of the conversation, and part of their recommendation is looking at other properties to use to bring in revenue. And so, conversations within CAC talked about alternative uses for schools. And so we really did extrapolate from there that, this was one of those excess pieces of property. Under the board criteria, a lot of the focus for the CAC really was about the closing of schools. And so not feeling like they could go in depth into researching the surplus property, but it was certainly something that came up with them. And I agree, a lot of our focus, and we may need to adjust as we go through the waiver and the application, is really more focusing on the non-use of the property, because it really has sat vacant or non-used by CUSD for the course of the last 11 years. And we'll emphasize that more as we do the application for the state.
Okay. Great, thanks. Yes, sorry, let's go around again here then.
Yes, I have one question. So let's say the waiver, okay, hopefully it'll go through. And if it doesn't, like, let's say, and you're forced to form a committee, 711 committee, right? So you said about a year it takes. Is there a way to accelerate that, or is it necessarily that it should be kept for a year, or they can meet for, let's say you happen to make a committee? Is there some requirement like that? Like how long?
There isn't, just the length of time typically for the committee to come together to look at the data. We could probably move a 711 committee further along because we have pulled so much data and have so much readily information. Again, we know that we will be looking at that when we move forward with closing of schools. So if the decision was to not go through this waiver and wait, it would just delay the sale of the Montebello property, but we would still go through the process. And, a year is an approximate time. It doesn't necessarily need to take that long.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, like, we still will have to plan it probably, right? Like, because in the event, well, I don't know how long it will take even this waiver to get approved, even if you put a waiver.
So the state only has 2 or 3 approval cycle times throughout the year. So once we submit our application, it takes them 10 to 12 weeks to review. They have a meeting in January that that would be the soonest we would hear whether they approve or not.
Okay, but forming a 711 committee, we cannot finish before that anyway, right? That's what
we wouldn't finish by January with a 711 committee. That would be too short.
So
of a
whichever
time
is
right now.
early, that's what probably we should be looking into. That's what I was trying to say. So maybe is waiver worth doing it or not? That's number one question. That with all these delays and stuff like that, and in the event they reject it, then you'll have to go back to
Then we
square
would have
one
to
again,
start at
and we'll have to. So we are going to miss what, 3 months or 4 months already.
So if we were denied the application or the application failed, we would probably then utilize our 711 committee that we'll use for our closing of schools and add Montebello into that. That would be one option that we could do, same committee could look at Montebello. Again, it's just the timing of it.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks. Great. Thanks. I just sweeping around. Lori, did you have anything else?
I don't right now.
All
Thank
right.
you.
And Phyllis, are you good or anything? Okay, great. And then Sylvia.
So I just had a quick clarifying question as I was listening to the discussion. Can you clarify or explain the 7-Eleven committee or the DAC is part of like the ed code or state, requirements for surplus property, right? For sites that have already been decided upon. They're kind of an after process, not a during process. Is that correct?
It is. So a district advisory committee through ed code is mandated after you determine a school is going to be closed or the surplus property. It makes sense to have it convening or being part of as you're making those decisions, but it does not fall as a mandatory under ed code until after you determine a school is to be closed. Then it is a requirement.
Okay. So in the case of Montebello, because it is surplus property, it's, if, waiver aside, that would be the appropriate time for that 7-Eleven committee.
Right, because it's surplus or closed, it's no longer used by the district.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sylvia. And I don't have any other questions myself. So let's go to public comments, if any. Do we have any?
No public comment.
No public comments. Okay, then just one last check before we move off the item. We're good. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and exit 12.3. And then moving on to section 13. These are 5 action items. The first one is the approval of the unaudited actuals financial report. Should we make a motion? Is there a staff introduction on this?
No presentation unless.
Okay,
asked
that's what
and
questions.
needed.
All right, then, since it's an action, let's get a motion on the table first.
I so move.
Thank you, Phyllis. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Lori. Okay, all right, and then kind of go, anybody with any sort of questions or, well, questions really, no? Okay, I have one, which is, so we've gotten some mails, I think, asking about sort of the ending balance at, I think it's 43 million. And I was wondering if you could speak to, and I know there's some funds in there because of all the grants and things, and some of those is to be spent in future years or, encumbered in some ways, I guess. I was just wondering can you speak to, of the 43 million, how much is that? I know the audit report has a breakdown restricted versus unrestricted, but I was just wondering, is there money in there we've gotten from the grants that we've gotten from SR2, from AB, was it
On
86?
on
or
the
something?
restricted side, yes,
Uh-huh.
because we did get, that's why you'll see that the fund balance is increased on the restricted side because those funds came in later during the
Right.
course of the year and we have not spent them. They're all budgeted for expenditure in this current year.
Right, but they're going to be spent in the
Yes.
next
yes,
year.
Yes, and on the unrestricted side, we did get a bump up from the time you did the estimated actuals at the time of the adopted budget to now about approximately 1.5, $1.6 million more, which is a good thing. That's what is supposed to happen when you close your books. So unaudited actuals basically represents the fact of what has happened, right? Every other report that you get during the course of the year, they are budget and they are plans. They're just estimating what's going to happen during the course of the year. And this is an actual accounting fact that says we've ended the year a little better than what we thought we would. And most of the 34 million that you're talking about, it has been assigned for certain purposes, and we give the breakdown of the assignments in the report.
Great. Great, thanks, Akir. All right, let's go, oh, wait, public comment check, sorry, are there any public comments on this one?
No, there are not.
No, all right, okay, let's go ahead and vote on this. On favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great, this motion passes. All right, moving on to 12.2. This is a resolution for, scrolling up, right, we talked the appropriations limitation. Right.
This is an appropriation limit that's set by the state, right? And whenever any jurisdiction, whether it's a city or a school district, exceeds the appropriation, we have to do what is called a GAN limit for the additional amount of tax base that we got. And every year it changes based on basically it's forecast by the state, by the population growth and the cost of living factors. That's how this comes about. Some years you don't, some years you get it and you just report it to the state.
Okay, great, thank you. Could I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Satish and Sylvia, will you second? Great, thank you. Do we have public comments on this one, Aaron?
No, we do not.
No comments. Okay, any questions? Not, let's go ahead and vote on this. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Moving on, 13.3, approval of the employment contract for the new CBO. Yes, sir.
I would just like to say a few words. One is we're very fortunate that we've had Kerr here with us for the last 2 months, and he's continuing with September. I'm also very excited that we were able to find a very qualified individual to actually return to Cupertino. So we are excited to welcome Chris Jew back in. He had left CUSD and went to Eastside Union High School District and is ready to come back to CUSD and continue to work with us. And he knows the many challenges ahead with us and is willing to take that on. So well known by the staff, has some great relationships, knows again where we are headed and where our challenges are. So we're excited to have him joining us at the end of the month.
Great, thank you. All right, let's get a motion on the table, please. Anyone?
I'll move.
Thanks, Sylvia. Could I get a second, please?
Second.
Thanks, Phyllis. Any questions from the board or no? Okay, do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
No public comments. Okay, well, let's go ahead and vote on this. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item 13.4, approval appointments to the Citizens Parcel Tax Oversight Committee. Any staff introduction on this?
So there's, in the parcel tax committee, there are different organizations people are a part of. This one particular vacancy was related to any appointment from a taxpayers organization. We did post, advertise for this, and then we just got one application, and we are recommending to the board that this person be appointed.
Great, thank you. All right, let's get a motion on the table, please.
I'll move.
Thank you, Sylvia. And
Happy to
Lori.
second.
Okay, Lori seconds. Any questions from the board? Any public comments?
No, there are not.
Okay.
I'll make a comment.
I'm sorry.
I'll make a
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry. I just, please go ahead.
Oh, I'll just say thank you to everybody who is serving. And I do have one clarifying question that perhaps you could take up with our new CBO. So I serve on the high school district Citizens Oversight Committee for both the bond and the parcel tax, and they run it as a combined committee just for sort of efficiency's sake, and we cover both items quarterly as separate agenda items. So I'm just wondering if that makes sense. And if the answer is no, because of our circumstances, it doesn't, that's fine. I'm just throwing it out there.
I will take it up.
All
Thank you,
right.
Mr. Jew.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's go ahead and vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Then the last action item is the approval of appointments to the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
So here again, there was one vacancy, but in this we had two applicants, and the staff had to evaluate both the applications, and based on our evaluation and the way the application was written and the experience of the individual, we are recommending the appointment of Jean Bedard, who served in different committees in the school district.
Great, thank you. Could I get a motion, please?
So move.
All right.
Let's
Okay,
already
Phyllis.
done.
So to Phyllis makes a motion, and then we'll have a second from Lori.
Happy to
Great,
second.
thank you. Any questions from the board? No. Okay. Public comments?
No, there.
Okay.
And I'll just make my same comment again. Thank you for your service.
All right. Thanks. Great. Let's go ahead and vote on this. And all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to section 14, board activities and committee reports. Anybody like to start off? I don't have anything. I'll take myself out of the pool. No, thanks.
I don't have
Lori.
anything either, Jerry.
Great. Thanks, Phyllis. Lori, please
I
go
can
ahead.
go. I'll skip over the things I know we're all doing. So I did just want to let you guys know. So a couple things for Santa Clara County School Boards Association, and then some things that have come via that organization. Let's see, AXA did a panel on the challenges surrounding the two different parts of AB 130, which is the independent study provisions for both the short-term and the long-term. So that's available on their YouTube feed if you're interested in going back and listening to that. Santa Clara County School Boards Association Legislative Action Committee did sort of a beginning of a deep dive on SB 237, which is the universal dyslexia screening. Maybe an item of interest moving forward, since it's already made it through both houses of the legislature. So an interesting one to follow if you're interested. Of note, a majority of states, 39 of them, already do universal screening, and the majority of the students who are identified can be helped with something as simple as tier 1 intervention in the classroom, or tier 1 supports, I should say, in the classroom, not intervention. And then the last one is Senator Becker did a panel on ventilation and filtration in schools, which I think is also out there and available. It felt really good attending to know that CUSD has completed all of those upgrades to meet the ASHRAE standards for epidemics that the experts on the panel were recommending. And I think the long-term takeaway that was flagged in that again, I'm just throwing out there for consideration of everybody, was really the experts talked about sort of the profound underinvestment across California in HVAC systems in schools, even predating the pandemic, and that will only be exacerbated by the fact that we're now basically running all of our HVAC units at max capacity. So their feeling was that that's really going to create a hastening of the maintenance and operations and replacement schedules on a lot of our units. So that's just something to sort of put in the back of your mind there as we think about facilities and operations. And that is it.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Anyone else? Anything? Okay. This is Stacy. Did you have?
Nothing for me.
I guess you have that section in the beginning now. So, all right. Great. Then moving on to section 15, 15.1 agenda settings. If anyone have anything to suggest? If not, I had one item I wanted to bring up. Back in 1920, right, I think before COVID, it seemed like a long time ago, we had talked about district priorities, and one of them on there was about electives across middle schools, the master schedule and the choices of that. So I felt like we had it on our draft district priorities, and then we're kind of working on that, and March hit and everything kind of went away. And I was wondering, I know it's tied into a lot of things we're doing, but if that's something I'd like to maybe just start the discussion. I know it's a complex thing. If we could, if folks are good with that, maybe we could pick that up again on the master schedules for middle schools. Okay, so
I'd be
it's a
happy to.
request. Okay, great, thanks. All right, anything else?
I guess piggybacking on that a little bit, it was really great when we had the nutrition services team come and do a presentation and kind of give us some, what's been going on and the numbers and things like that. With the middle school as well, there's so many kids that are in sports and in the after school sports programs, and we've never really, had a presentation on that or been able to, really get a big picture of what that looks like, what the program looks like. Would it be possible to add that somewhere in an agenda?
Absolutely, we can. That'd be a pleasure to bring back.
Great. All right. Thanks.
It's probably not on September 23rd.
Okay, yes. All right, great. Well, thanks. Then if there's anything else, I will go ahead. I think we're turning back to closed session,
Yes,
right? Yes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. So thanks, everyone, and thanks for coming. All right. Oh, there, all right. Great. Okay, we're reconvening from closed session with nothing to report. So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this board meeting at 8:24 p.m. Thank you.